Join us as we dive into the history, hauntings, and high strangeness of the world to try to better understand the paranormal. I will be your guide. I am paranormal researcher and investigator Eric Freeman Sims. Welcome to the Unseen Paranormal Podcast. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Unseen Paranormal Podcast. Today we have my friend Steve Stockton and, of course, one of y'all's favorites on the show. He, if you're not familiar with Steve, he has written many books. He is also the narrator over at Missing Person and Mysteries YouTube channel and his own channel, 13 Past Midnight. He has the National Park Mysteries and Disappearances series of books. He also has Strange Things in the Woods, My Strange World, and quite a few others. You can find all those books on Amazon, Kindle, and wherever fine books are sold. Hey, Steve, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, thanks for having me back, Eric. Glad to be here. And I love that you put that in there, wherever fine books are sold. My publisher likes for me to say that. So thank you.
Yeah, well, your books are awesome. I've read all of them and love them. Of course, you've been on the show quite a few times. And yeah, I wanted people to go out and check out all your books and go listen to the Missing Person Mysteries channel because I listen to the podcast. I do I've done some editing for y'all too, but I listen to the podcast on a regular basis. I'll catch the videos whenever I can on YouTube, and yeah, we're friends, but I'm also a fan of what y'all do and what you do, and so.
Well, I appreciate that, and I'm proud to call you a friend too. And I'm glad you enjoy the books and the podcasts and the videos and everything that I do.
All right, so your forte, of course, with the Missing Person Mystery channel is these weird missing cases, and a lot of people, if you're not familiar with Steve's work on the missing person mystery stuff, you may be familiar with David Paulides, what he's done, bringing the missing 411 stuff to the forefront, national parks and all that stuff. And y'all cover a lot of the same cases that he does. And I've even seen y'all cover a lot of the cases before he's ever covered them. Yeah,
and again, it's one of those things, we're not keeping score or keeping count. And I get that from his fans sometimes. Now, Dave and I are friends. I've met Dave in person. We've been friends on Facebook for probably a dozen years or so. It's not 2012 anyway. And his first book came out about the same time mine did, but different topics back then. Strange Things in the Woods, that was just what it was. But a lot of times his fans will say, oh, that's David's case. And I don't see it that way. I mean, nobody owns the missing, but if anybody does, it's either the person that we're talking about or their family, their loved ones. And our mission statement, if you will, we don't really have one, but it's if we can bring one person home or give one family closure, that's what we set out to do. And to me, if it was my loved one or a child or a parent or whoever that was missing, I would want every person out there that talks about those things to talk about it. The more people, the better. So I don't understand this. People wanting to safeguard and gatekeep and not, share the information.
Right. And a lot of these cases, the media has gotten what they wanted out of it, and they don't even cover it anymore. And the police, a lot of these cases, the police aren't even investigating them anymore.
Yeah, it's just I don't know, they run out of steam, they run out of clues, they run out of witnesses, and I can understand. I mean, there comes a point where it becomes an exercise in futility, and they have to take people off that case until they get a break or anything, and hopefully that's what we'll do. I've even had people say, well, why do you put all that information in there about they were last seen wearing this? And if you have any information, call this department or that department. Well, again, because that's what I would want done if it were my missing loved one. It's not meant to be entertainment. I mean, it can be entertainment for some people, I imagine, but for the people who have suffered these things and are still suffering and living through it, it's not entertainment. And if you're looking for somebody, you describe what they were wearing on the day they went missing, and that might jog somebody's memory. Like, oh yeah, I was in that national park on that day. I remember seeing a guy wearing that outfit. Didn't know it was somebody that was missing, because I'm sure that happens.
Right.
That you can jog somebody's memory.
Yeah, and a lot of times, especially with some of these cases when they go cold, it's going to take somebody calling and giving a tip or something they remember for the police to maybe solve the case or find the person or find their remains.
Yeah. And I think it was Unsolved Mysteries or one of those shows. They used to say, someone out there somewhere knows what happened. And that's true. I mean, it may only be the person that went missing if it was not some sort of foul play. But some of these, somebody knows exactly where that person was or what happened to them, and that's what it'll take is either somebody remembering or somebody ratting somebody out, or a deathbed confession in some cases. But there's the cold cases are really sad ones.
Yeah. And some of the weird ones that kind of grab everybody's attention, they kind of have a lot in common, and what makes them weird. And it's kind of David Paulides has done this whole profile, but a lot of the cases that you cover as well fit the kind of this profile with people being near water or like a boulder field, also being found if they're found alive, or their remains being found somewhere where that's already been searched multiple times and they weren't found, but 2 weeks later they're found.
Yeah. Now there's a lot of these cases. Now some of it is just pure misadventure, being ill-equipped or overestimating your technical abilities for hiking and climbing, not being prepared, for going into the national park or even just the woods. But then there are other cases that have that supernatural element where things don't add up completely. They were there 1 minute, literally gone the next, or the footprints stop. If it's, somewhere where it's sandy, where you can see footprints just stop. And I've had people ask me, well, what's going on out there? Is it animal predation? Is it serial killers or some sort of human predators? Is it aliens? Is it portals? Is it Bigfoot? Is it the Glimmer Man? Yes, it could be all the above.
Right.
There is no one thing I don't think of, but it's a combination of all those things because the serial killers and stuff, that has been proven that there were people that took victims out of the national parks and national forests. And then you have people that have been attacked by big cats or bear and things like that. And then you do have people that just want to disappear, that will go into the woods and then maybe hike out somewhere else. And then when they come out the other side, they've got a new name and a new life and just left everything behind. Now, that's rare now. It's a lot harder to do in this day and age because you have that techno or the digital footprint was what I was trying to say there. And it's a lot easier to track people than it was because, you had people that had committed crimes like John List that just killed his entire family and then disappeared. And then he was found because of one of those TV shows that was, I can't remember which show, but the people saw him on the show and recognized him as their neighbor. And there he was. It was him. Years later, had a new wife and family and everything. So that happens. But yeah, that's the real mystery of it is the supernatural ones, the ones where there is no explanation, the ones where they maybe didn't have a reason to disappear. And sadly, there are people that go out there that, that are terminal or whatever, that want to just go out and perish in the woods as a form of slow suicide or sometimes intentional. But again, even if you're going to do that, I think it would be hard to get yourself into a place where you can't be found.
Right.
I mean, yeah, there's animal predation. They'll scatter your bones and gnaw your skull and all that, but they won't eat your shoes. They won't eat your belt buckle. They won't eat, there's going to be something left somewhere if it's that sort of thing. And in some of these cases where there's absolutely nothing, or where the clothing is found neatly folded, or where the boots are found miles away, yet there was snow on the ground, or a child is found several miles away, and there's no way this child could have walked that far in that time. The Riker Webb case last year, that's a good case in point there. And if you've seen the pictures of that kid before, and after they brought him out of the woods, he looks like he's shell-shocked or something. I remember when I was little seeing Vietnam veterans, they kind of had that look on their face, So and he was found like miles away, had supposedly walked like up a mountain, down a mountain, and they found him in like a tool shed or garden shed or something out behind the cabin, sitting in a lawnmower bag, talking to himself. And the little footy pajamas, you can see them in the picture there. They're worn and dirty, but they've not been walked a couple of miles in. And I think it was raining or muddy or something at that time. There's something else at play there.
Yeah, one of the things that y'all started doing on the Missing Person Mysteries channel yeah, you do all these missing cases, but you also have like a series that you do. One of the series that y'all started recently that I really like is the almost taken cases. And that's where people have disappeared, but then they show back up alive. And one of the ones you covered here recently was in the Middle East. This little boy was supposed to get off the bus, and he went missing for 3 weeks. But 3 weeks later, he showed up in the same clothes that he was wearing and acted like nothing happened. And he just got off the bus at the normal time and walked home.
But yeah, the really unusual ones like that are where people have gone missing and then are found or show back up. There was one guy in particular that he'd only been missing a few hours, like 2 or 3 hours, but to his experience, it was much, much longer. He said he had seen the sun rise and set a couple of times. And then likewise, there are other people that just the opposite of that, where they've been missing for maybe days or even a week or two, but when they come back, they think only a couple of hours have passed. So, is that a glitch? Is that a time slip? Do portals exist? What's going on? It seems like sometimes the actual fabric of time and space, something happens out there in the woods.
Yeah, there was a case too of a lady who went out with her brother. She went missing, and they found her later in the same spot that they had searched before. And she said that she had ate mushrooms and berries and drank water out of the stream. But for all intents and purposes, she should have been dead from all the stuff that she was eating and drinking out of the stream and all that stuff.
Right. Yeah, and some of the kid cases too, where there's one, and it's happened more than once, but one said a little kid was lost, and then when they did find him, he said that a bear found him and took him back to its cave and snuggled with him and kept him warm and fed him berries and stuff. Well, you and I both know a bear is not going to do that. If a bear does anything, it's going to eat you,
right,
or attack you. And then that's all the explanation people need. Oh, well, there you go. It was a bear. Nothing to see here. Move along. Go home. But no, I don't believe a bear can do that. And there's been more than one cases like that. And it's always a child or somebody that, and a lot of people will say that, well, that was a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch or some kind of creature like that. But yet this child is so small, they don't have any knowledge of anything like that. So it looks like a teddy bear, it's the big furry thing, a bear. But, you live close to the Smokies like I did. I've seen bears and stuff, and you can tell a bear from something that's not a bear.
Yeah. One of the recent ones, and you actually had the lady on, you actually did an interview with her on Missing Person Mysteries. She found the bones of this guy, Aaron Hedges' case.
Yeah, Jane Goldie, her and her dad they'd gone to a dude ranch and were out on a ride, and they saw the skull sitting off this trail they were riding on. And another weird thing about that, that whole case is just full of anomalous stuff. Where his skull was found was far away from where the rest of him was found, and he supposedly been with a hunting party, and the mule spooked and kicked off his stuff, and then they had some other stuff stashed at a nearby cabin. He was walking to that cabin, but instead of taking the turn, and he knew where to go, he continued a different way for several miles in the snow, and I think he was one of the ones that took his boots off.
Yeah.
And where they found his clothes, they said it looked like literally he had just sat on a rock and died. His bones were still in his clothes. The pants were still in the shoes. And he was within sight of an occupied cabin where there was people and heat and food and everything. And to just sit down and die when you were that close.
Right.
But yeah, that whole thing was strange. But yeah, they found his skull. And again, this was in an area where between the time that happened and the time he had gone missing had been several years, 2 or 3 years, I think. She said she estimated there were probably over 100 rides every season past that point. So nobody else, none of the other people, I guess, at the Dude Ranch or the wranglers that led those trail rides, they didn't notice a human skull. And I wasn't able to show it because the family had asked us not to out of respect. But she showed me the picture that she took with her phone, the time and date on it. It's obvious what it is, and it wasn't covered in leaves. It wasn't in high grass or anything. It was just a skull sitting there.
Yeah.
So how could you miss it? She's like, it's one of those things. Once you saw it, you could not see it. It's there. And I think her dad noticed it first, and he took his shirt off and hung it on the fence post there to mark where it was. And then they called the authorities in. And the other weird thing about that, they came in, they retrieved his skull, and then and apparently they'd already covered part of his remains, or recovered part of them. And they even told the people that owned the property, like, well, we've got everything we need. If you do find any more bones or anything, just bury them.
Wow.
And I thought, what? That doesn't sound right.
Yeah.
The whole case is just contradictions and strangeness. And there was even tales that he was on medication. He was trying to come off of alcohol addiction, and the medication may have affected him. And then there was the thing that he had fought with his hunting partners and then stormed off. And then there was even another theory that he wanted to disappear and start a new life. But if that was the case, he didn't make it because they found his skull. And the whole thing, like when the people that he was with knew he was missing, they told some people at a bar like a couple nights later.
Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, then Aaron, we don't know what happened to him. So maybe they did so. I mean, who knows? It's one of those things where only the people that were there know exactly what happened. Kind of like Winston Churchill said that he's attributed to saying that the victors write history. And it's just the way with these cases. I mean, if you've got people that were there, that's all you've got to go on. And again, who knows? It's as pirates would say, dead men tell no tales. So they can make up any story narrative they want to.
Yeah, and the crazy mountains where he went missing is like just an outcropping of mountains. It's not like a whole chain. It's kind of in the middle, surrounded by towns and ranches, and all you'd have to do is follow water downhill and you would find civilization. And also, like you were saying, it was overlooking this ranch where he could see a house with, a chimney and like people there and this whole ranch. And then they also found that he never dropped his bow. He had a pistol in his backpack. It looked like he had sat on a rock and drank out of his thermos, and he still had like granola bars and stuff in his backpack. So he wasn't starving. He wasn't, dehydrated. He had water and things like that. So that's what makes it, so strange that he just sat there and died for whatever reason.
Yeah, it's an odd case, and there's a lot of them like that. And you'll have to pardon me, I can't remember the gentleman's name right now, but there was a guy out with a film crew, I think is in Idaho, filming something for the History Channel. And the guy said he needed to go use the bathroom. Well, they looked around, suddenly he's running toward a small cliff. He jumps off that, runs into the woods, and they is never seen again. And they found like his boots or his clothing or something hanging on a fence.
That was it was a film crew for the show Gold Rush up in the Klondike.
Yep.
Yeah, he just turned around and ran off, and his parents, I saw something about that not so long ago where his parents are trying to say, well, there's obviously foul play, like something happened, But yeah, that's weird. Just with a film crew, and for all intents and purposes, it said he was happy and he loved what he did, and just out of nowhere, took off into the woods and hasn't been found.
Strange ones like that. Yeah. They're just, and there are certain similarities in a lot of these cases. People wearing red tend to go missing more than people that don't. I guess you could say it that way. The people that do go missing, they tend to be on one end of the scale or the other. They tend to be autistic or very, very highly educated, like PhD candidate, that type thing. They also tend to be skilled woodsmen or hunters, people that have spent a great deal of time in the outdoors. They're in the best of health. Like there's a guy in Washington State. He was, I think he's doing his first mountain run, but he was a runner and an outdoorsman. They saw him going up a mountain, but he never came back down. They don't know what happened to him. And I think that was the case where the law enforcement commented that, well, he either went in the mountain or he went up. He's not on the mountain.
Yeah, another thing about some of these cases is the FBI showing up, or like in Canada, the RCMP showing up.
Yeah, and normally, unless it's a kidnapping or something like that, the Dennis Martin case is a good point example. That was Father's Day, 1969. I remember very well when that happened. I was living in Knoxville at the time, same town Dennis was from. We were about the same age. I think I was 5 going on 6, and he was 6 going on 7. And Yeah, the FBI shows up. The Green Berets were there. Now, supposedly, they were on a training mission somewhere nearby and just decided to help out. But the weird thing about that was they wouldn't have anything to do with the Park Service or any of the other volunteers. They kept to themselves. They had their own communications posts set up. They didn't want to go with any of the trackers or either people like that. They wanted to do their own thing. And that's just kind of strange. And the FBI field agent out of Knoxville that was over that case later went on to take his own life in a very spectacular fashion on a nightclub that's used to be there on Kingston Pike in Knoxville called Caddies. He came in one night, went out in the middle of the dance floor, pulled his service revolver out, and good night, Gracie.
Wow.
So what did that guy know, and was it related?
Right.
Mean, we don't know, but there's a lot of strangeness with that case. There's a guy on YouTube that has a channel called South Force 10. I don't know if you've ever listened to him or not, but he talks about before the Smokies was the national park, that there were, he believes they're like human Bigfoot hybrids, but these hairy wild men that lived in there, feral humans, whatever they are. And he claims that back in the 30s, prior to becoming a national park, which I think I want to say was 1936, I may be wrong on that year, but prior to that, some of his relatives were hired to go into what would later become the park and thin these things out because they were taking people. And then you have that containment theory. There's people that say that's the reason that some of the places for national parks are where they are, that there's stuff in those woods that the government wants to keep an eye on and keep people away from. But again, then why would you build a national park and invite people into it?
Right.
But even then, with the Smokies, I mean, there's places you can go in there that probably no human, or at least not for several hundred years or even longer, have ever set foot in there. And I've had people say, oh, that's not true. You just haven't been far enough back in the woods.
Right.
I'll tell you, I've been in some places where, well, case in point, Eric Rudolph, the abortion clinic bomber, he was on the FBI's most wanted list. I think he was the #1 there for a while. He went into Nantahala National Forest, which is not anywhere as big as the Smokies, and hid out for like 5 or 6 years. Yeah. And this was a man with no outdoor experience, no woodcraft, anything like that. He didn't know what he was doing, but he didn't want to go to prison, so he hid in the woods. And if somebody like that can stay hidden, then you know somebody that's been raised in those woods, maybe 2 or 3 generations of people that, and there are places like that, like over where my dad's from on the Cumberland Plateau in Ventress County. There's places over there. There were whole families that lived miles back in the woods, and they farmed, they did whatever they could, they hunted, they fished, and maybe go to town once or twice a year to get stuff. And just they liked that isolation, didn't want anything to do with anybody. And even Dwight McCarter, he's retired now, but he was a park ranger, Smokies. He was a lead tracker on the Dennis Martin case. He says that there are, now he didn't allude to them being Bigfoot or any kind of cryptid, but he said that there are what he described as wild men or wild people that live off grid in the Smokies.
Yeah, that's crazy to think that.
Who knows?
Yeah, there's that much land that somebody could do that.
And yeah, if you knew what you were doing,
right,
there's plenty to hunt and forage for in the Smokies. There's fresh water, there's game, there's edible plants. If you could build even a rudimentary shelter, and you could do it in such a way that if you didn't want to be seen or found, you wouldn't be.
Yeah, there's a speaking of like the FBI and the Fed showing up. Are you familiar with the Ray Salmon case? It's up in British Columbia.
That sounds familiar, but just to be honest with you, and I apologize to your audience, we've covered so many of these cases. We had to start a database and a spreadsheet, but like just in the National Park Mysteries series, there's 10 in each one of those, and I just recorded the 30th episode, so there's 300 names right there, and that's just one series. We do the Land of the Lost, we do the creepy cases, and then we just do some other bigger cases that have a lot of information and data as standalones. So again, that name sounds familiar, but I may or may not have covered it. I can't say without looking at my cheat sheet.
So this guy up in, I think it's British Columbia, Canada, he went to this lake with his camper and his 2 dogs, and he, from what his family and his wife said, he had been there numerous times throughout his life. He was familiar with this area. He had a pistol, he had a rifle, He had his 2 dogs with him, like I said, as well. And he just went missing. And they found his truck parked where they expected to find it, on the kind of the shore of this lake. And his dogs were locked in the camper. There was nothing wrong with them. They were both fine. They finally found his backpack and his clothes down by the lake. Not like and this is not like a beach where they found it. It's like wooded area where you would just kind of, come out of the woods and there's the water. And, but the RCMP SWAT team came in with AR-15s to help look for this guy. And the search and rescue people were like, why do you need AR-15s? We're out here, but they couldn't track his scent with the dog. Couldn't find a scent to track him, with tracking dogs. They found his pistol like 3 miles away on a hilltop, from where his clothes and his rifle and his backpack were. No signs of him whatsoever. And after a couple of days of searching, the RCMP SWAT team told the search and rescue team, you don't need to go back out in the woods. There's nothing out there to find. And they wouldn't let him go back out searching.
That's strange.
Yeah. And they never found the guy. And the RCMP's explanation to the wife was that, we think he drowned in the water and, his body's in the lake somewhere. Yeah.
This is just amazing. You hear things about, there was another guy that went missing, and again, forgive me, I can't remember his name, and I'm just doing this off the top of my head, by the way. I don't have any notes or anything. But there was another guy that went missing that he had been like a mercenary soldier. He had worked for, as a contractor for some of these alphabet agencies, with government involvement and stuff. And again, it's one of those, this was somebody that knew their way around, that had been, in battle in other countries and stuff, and had worked security and things like that in these highly dangerous areas. And then he just disappears. Now, some people think that was intentional. He just wanted out of what he was doing and disappeared. Now, somebody like that would know how to change their name and change their life. Or did he know too much and he was disappeared?
Right.
I don't know if you're keeping up with but here in the news recently, actor Julian Sands has gone missing on Mount Baldy in California. Well, again, now this is just rumors, speculation, tinfoil hat stuff, but I've heard that he either wanted to disappear or that he knew some things that he wasn't supposed to know and was going to blow the whistle and was disappeared. Now, I've been up to Mount Baldy. I used to skateboard semi-professionally back in the 70s. I went with some guys up to Mount Baldy. There's drainage pipes up there, these huge round drainage pipes. And if you Google it online, Google Mount Baldy skateboard, and you'll see what I'm talking about. And that's a frightening place up there. I mean, there's other stuff up there too. But, there's rattlesnakes, there's drop-offs, and it's just a creepy, creepy place. We gone up there, then you have to like climb down a rope and go up a ladder and all this. It takes a very concentrated effort to get to this section of the pipe where you can skateboard in it, full pipe. And if you skate too far out the other end and can't stop, you'll go right off into another drainage thing. And we had hitched a ride up there. I was just visiting some friends in Southern California at the time. Names you would know. One of them was in a rock band and the other was a professional skateboarder. And we got stuck up there. We couldn't find a way back down. And there's no way we wanted to walk off of Mount Baldy at night. Like I said, there's rattlesnakes, there's drop-offs. The road at that time was narrow. You could get greased by a truck or something because they wouldn't see you. There wasn't any real shoulder to walk on. So we slept up there in this tunnel. And Eric, that was one of the strangest things. We were the only ones there. I mean, you could hear us when we were there. The skateboards made noise and we talked and laughed and stuff.
Yeah.
But when we just kind of sat down for the night to try and sleep a little bit, we heard voices in that drainage area. We heard kids laughing. We heard people talking. We heard singing, maybe even chanting. And it was, I think the place is haunted. I don't know what all has gone there. I've never really delved into the history of Mount Baldy. But again, it's one of those areas, there's paranormal stuff happens there. And that happens a lot of times in places where people go missing. The name game, they call it. Now, Charles Fort wrote about it, I think, back in the 30s. Lauren Coleman wrote about it in his book, 1983's Mysterious America, where and people talk about it nowadays. Some of these newer creators talk about places with devil names, the Diablo, devil's this, devil's that. Right. odd stuff will be there. And again, that's not a new discovery. I've heard people say, well, so and so's talking about that. Yeah, but it's been talked about for decades. Nobody was just aware of it. But that holds true, and it makes you wonder, did it get that name from, say, the Native Americans because of some weird stuff that's gone on there? Or did the very fact of naming it that create like a tulpa effect and it draws stuff to it? I mean, which came first, the chicken or the egg?
Right.
So, but we find that a lot. And there's certain other names that aren't devil names, but Lafayette, that's Lauren Coleman wrote about that one, and literally that's talking about the Fae, the fairy folk. But any place with Fayetteville, Lafayette, any of those names, there seems to be something strange connected with that. Another one is Lenore. There's Lenore City there in Tennessee.
Yeah.
Lenore is the dark or the black. So anything that has that name tends to, anything with anything weird, devil, diablo, ghost, demon. Look at Route 666 and out here where I'm at. They've renamed that to 491 because a lot of people didn't like the name. Plus, people kept stealing the signs that said State Route 666. But there's all kinds of weird stuff on that road. 200-mile stretch of road that runs up through not all the states of the Four Corners, but most of the three of them. And I mean, they've seen skinwalkers, they've seen shapeshifters. I had a story that I did not too long ago for 13. It was a secondhand account from the person that told me, heard it from the person that it happened to, but he kept encountering the same hitchhiker on Route 666. This is back in the 90s. And he saw the guy, he didn't pick him up. And then 30, 40 miles down the road, he sees it's the same guy. No cars have passed him. And, he's driving at full speed. So how did this guy get ahead of him? And this happened several times. And each time the guy seemed to look hairier and more unkempt, to where toward the end of the story, it looks like a werewolf or a dog man or something run along beside this guy's car. He pulls into what he thinks is an occupied dwelling. Turns out it's like an old mobile home that nobody lives there. But he goes in, shuts the door, and this thing is just sitting on the roof of his car, like waiting on him.
Wow. And
it's just, there's all kinds of stuff. I'm close to that area, and there's all kinds of tribal magic and Native American shaman witchcraft, whatever you want to call it. There's stuff out here. Chokecherry Canyon, just up the road here. I've been up there. There were some infamous murders there back in the 70s. A really good book about it called The Broken Circle, where kind of as a rite of passage, high school students here would sort of give the Navajo, or the Dine as they prefer to be called, a hard time. Well, these high school kids had, I think it was a homeless guy or a drunk or something that they had found, and they got a little too carried away and ended up murdering the guy. Well, being Caucasian and tried in a Caucasian court, they got off with a slap on the wrist. But one of the Navajo or the Dine medicine men said, "Oh, no, 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 no." And he put a curse on them, and every single one of them died in a short time under mysterious circumstances. Really good book, Broken Circle. Wow. I can't remember the guy's name that wrote it, but that's the kind of stuff that goes on out here. A friend of mine was rappelling with some friends when she was in college in that same canyon, and they'd finished rappelling and had built a bonfire and were just kind of hanging out. It was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and they see an old lady, like a granny woman, literally come walking through this canyon, come from nowhere, and just basically was going nowhere. And I think they offered her a ride or something like that. She wouldn't speak to them, and I believe she ended up getting in somebody's car. They gave her a ride, and then she just disappeared out of the car. What was that? They don't call it the land of enchantment for nothing, and that's not as good as it sounds necessarily. I mean, out here you've got the Aztec crash site that's just down the road. You've got Dulce Base, where supposedly there's crash saucer parts, there's alien bodies, and then they claim there's alien human hybrids there in that underground base. You have Roswell, you have the Taos home, and right here in Farmington, where I live, it's the home of one of the biggest UFO events that most people have never heard of. I hadn't. And what it was part of Project Blue Book, that somehow got skipped when they released a lot of the information. It only came to light recently through some FOIAs. But in 1950, there were 100 silver crafts and one red one that flew up and down the Animas River here in Farmington for 2 days. It made local headlines and everything. And literally, I can walk out my door, and if I'm straight shot, if I go through the neighbor's yard, but I can go to the end of the block, turn, go down the hill, I can be at the Animas River in 15 minutes. And I'm thinking, like, what is it with this area in general?
Yeah.
There's just something about New Mexico, Arizona, a lot of high strangeness there too. I've always read about the Superstition Mountains and the Lost Dutchman gold mine. We made a video about that recently. That's been on my radar since 1978. Jim Brandon wrote a book called Weird America, A Guide to Places of Mystery in the United States. And that was the first place I ever read about the superstitions. And I want to go. As soon as the weather warms up, I'm headed to the superstitions. The people have been in there looking for the gold. They found a lot of bodies, minus the heads, where the heads have never been found. Other people been the skulls have been found, but with bullet holes in them. There's all kinds of stories there, depending on the tribe. Some of them won't go near it. They believe a diabolical possession will occur. Other tribes, there's certain areas that they avoid, and then still others it doesn't seem to bother at all. But there's stories of anomalous stuff like pictures. You can't, certain rocks and caves and things that you simply cannot make a picture of, or if you do, it'll come out blurry. Strange weather anomalies, little clouds that will pop up out of nowhere and seem to follow you, or almost a gale force wind that'll blow up out of nowhere when you're inching your way along a cliff face. So I can't wait, brother. That kind of stuff just turns my crank. And I'm not going to look for the gold mine. That seems to come with a hefty price. Yeah. But I do want to spend some time in the superstitions.
Yeah, the Lost Dutchman's gold mine. I've seen lots of stuff on that, and it's an interesting story, and the fact that people are still out there looking for it.
Yeah, and did it even exist?
Right.
There's some conjecture that it was never a real thing. So who knows? But it's fun to think about. And like you said, it's kind of like the Oak Island or the Beale ciphers or any of these other lost or hidden treasures that lights some people up and they want to go looking for. Yeah, we covered several people that have gone missing while looking for this gold. Some were found, some weren't.
Yeah, and there's been so many shows, like even on the History Channel, Discovery Channel, that you can find about the mine and the whole story, and it's pretty fascinating story. And who knows out there, people might be falling down mine shafts, but yeah, with the weird skulls and bullet holes in them and things that they found,
and the ones where the head was never found.
Yeah,
missing head, missing skulls altogether.
Yeah. One of the cases actually hit close to home here, weird missing person case. Last year, there's a guy from Dover, Tennessee, who went missing in Alaska on a hunting trip, and they still haven't found anything from him. That was a weird story. I don't know if y'all covered that on Missing Person Mysteries at all or not, but I think I had sent it to you.
Probably. I know we have the Alaskan Triangle video, and then we cover cases from Alaska all the time, it seems like. And that's just a place where a lot of people go missing. Now, I've contacted Melia Miller, who, if you watch any of those videos that we talk about recently, where somebody from Alaska's gone missing, it says, if you have any information, please contact Melia Millers of the Alaska State Troopers and give her number. Well, I reached out to her, and she's in charge of the missing persons clearinghouse there in Alaska. It's a part of the, I guess, I don't remember what department she actually is. It's not just the state troopers. It's like I want to say the Department of the Interior or something like that.
Yeah.
But it's a government position there. And she's like, well, I don't know. Everything has to be cleared through my superiors. And she's like, is there specific cases you want to talk about? And I don't think she'd be allowed to do that. But I just want her to come on and talk in general about how not to go missing in Alaska, because apparently it's an easy place. But then there's other things there, just weird stuff. So that Alaskan Triangle video is weird. But one of the strangest is Anjikuni Village, where the entire village just disappeared.
Yeah.
And apparently they dug up their dead relatives and took them with them, but yet they left their dogs tied up to starve. They left their weapons and their food and stuff in their dwellings. So I don't get that. I mean, if you had enough time to dig up your kinfolks and take them with you, Why would you not take your dogs, your weapons, your food? They said literally some of those places looked like people had just walked out the door. Still food on the table, rifle sitting by the door. And in that place, you have to have some kind of either to hunt or for protection or whatever. But and then there were stories, about a wild woman that lived in the mountains and giants and things. So I want to go there. I'd planned last year to take a cruise, and I'd found somebody in Alaska. The closest I could get to it was, I don't know, the Anjikuni where it was. And I finally found a guy with a seaplane that said, yeah, that's the only way to get there is by seaplane or by boat. And he said, I'll take you out there, but I'm not staying. He said, you can stay if you want to. I'll come back and get you if you're still there. And I was going to do it. I wasn't going to spend the night, but me and my traveling companion, we were going to go and just film some stuff and then, have the guy just wait, don't take off. We'll be right back. Give us a few hours. And that didn't happen because of some other issues and some medical issues that went on with my traveling companion. But I'd still like to do that someday. And I'm drawn to these places. Mount Shasta, we've covered that a lot. I had a young lady on that I interviewed not too long ago that was living in the Bay Area, felt Shasta's call, dropped everything, bought camping and survival gear, and went and lived in a tent on Mount Shasta for 5 months. And it's another place where there's that weird energy. There's something about it. Last time I was in there was spring of last year. Spent a couple of days there, and I saw lights up on the mountains. Kind of reminded me of the Brown Mountain lights. I don't know if you've ever seen those, but much bigger. I mean, these lights would have been the size of an aircraft. Where the Brown Mountains, they look like lantern lights. They can look bigger. But and another time I was outside about 2:00 in the morning, and I felt like somebody was watching me. And I actually stayed in McLeod, which is the next little town just down the road. And it was the off season. Normally that's the skiing area. And we were like the only ones at this lodge. They had several cabins there. And it's literally a thing where they would come in and clean like after somebody had left, but there was nobody on site all the time that time of year. So I'm out there and I feel somebody staring at me. And we'd already talked about how deserted McLeod felt. We would drive the streets and maybe only see one or two other people in this whole little town. But I feel somebody staring at me, and I whip around, and right there over my shoulder, there's Mount Shasta. It's like the mountain watches you. It reminds me of that Nietzsche quote, when you peer into the abyss peers into you. I think that mountain watches you. It's got its eye on you.
Yeah, and there's all kind of weird stories of the Lemurians living inside of there and UFO base inside the mountain and
ascended masters. And apparently it's like an airport for UFOs. But yeah, you have the Lemurians, you have a lot of people that started New Age religions and stuff that had their enlightenment or their discovery or whatever on Mount Shasta. There's still the I Am reading room there in the town of Little Shasta. I can't remember the gentleman's name. We talked about him in the video, but he started that as a church and had several million followers at one time. And there's supposedly gold inside the mountains and a city of gold and one or two actually the most interesting Bigfoot accounts I've ever heard came from Mount Shasta. A lady was there one year and saw what she described as a female Bigfoot giving birth on the slope there on Mount Shasta. And then about a year later, another lady, they didn't know each other, it was totally unrelated. She was in the same area and she saw what she described as a female Sasquatch nursing a baby Sasquatch under a tree in the same general area. Well, there you go. One lady 1 year saw it being born. Lady the next year saw it as an infant being nursed. And there's some falls there at McLeod where they've had fairy encounters. The infamous robot grandma story where the little boy went missing and claims that somebody that looked like his grandma but wasn't his grandma but was a robot took him back to a cave where there was weapons and backpacks and things with dust on and possibly even people like in a state of suspended animation. She tried to get him to defecate on a piece of paper. He wouldn't do it. And she's like, well, you're just not cooperating. I'm going to take you back, leave you on the trail, and be done with you. Sure enough, they found him sitting on a trail in a place they'd already searched. And then wasn't until weeks later that he told that story. But the really interesting thing about that, the grandma that he thought he saw the robot or the clone of, she had an encounter several months previously on Mount Shasta. She'd gone camping, had heard a noise outside her tent. The last thing she remembered was looking out and seeing red eyes. And a lot of these cryptid stories, I know a lot of Barton Nunnally's stories and stuff, all these things have red eyes. Well, whatever it was, it had red eyes. The next thing she knows, she's waking up and it's morning. She's outside her tent, face down in the dirt with no memory of how she got there. And then later, her companion, who was in another tent, found 2 puncture wounds on the back of her neck. So, was that some kind of alien shenanigans where they took something out of her and made this clone that the little boy encountered?
Yeah.
It boggles the minds. But Shasta is full of all kinds of stories like that. And you have those places. Crater Lake, Oregon is another one. That general area coming down the I-5, you pass through a lot of weirdness on the way to the Oregon vortex, all that stuff.
Yeah. There's another case it's a little true crime, but it's also weird. And I came across it researching my book. The Reelfoot Lake incident is just kind of a weird true crime story.
Yeah, that was the one where the hunters and the guy comes up in a boat and he's like friendly, like, "Hey guys, how you doing? What's going on?" They were in a duck blind, I think, or a fishing camp. I can't remember if it was ducks or fish. Must have been ducks, because the guy suddenly pulls out his rifle and just starts shooting him.
Yeah.
And for no reason, it's like the guy just flipped his lid for no reason. And I don't remember all the details and specifics of that, but if you want to know the story, go watch the video of our Missing Persons and Mysteries. That's another just weird one. What did you find out about it?
Yeah, it was. I pulled up a bunch of newspaper articles and things about it, and it was an older gentleman that shot these guys, and one of them survived. One of the guys survived. The other 2 died, and they never found the old guy until it took him a couple of weeks, and I think a hunter found his body in the woods where he had killed himself. And but for all intents and purposes, everybody knew this guy. He owned a lumber company. This older gentleman who shot these guys, he owned a lumber company that was very successful, millions of dollars a year. They had like 3 different locations out that way in West Tennessee towards Reelfoot Lake, and had no reason to do this to these guys.
To just open fire on these guys. Yeah. And even the guy that survived, I think, said that it was just the weirdest thing, that he didn't seem angry. He was like friendly and cordial towards them, and all of a sudden just starts shooting.
And they invited him into their duck blind to hunt with them. So it's not like they were saying, "Get out of here," you know.
Yeah. I have heard of that story, like deer hunting and stuff, where guys have, "This is my area." And you get out of here, fire a warning shot or something. And it's probably happened, but I've never heard of anybody killing anybody over a deer spot or anything like that. But yeah, that one, it was just, none of it made any sense. And again, you just got this one guy, and then his is the only story that we've got.
Right.
And I don't know, maybe it went down some other way, but if it happened the way he claims that it happened, it's 100% weird.
Well, talking about strange places, the more I dove into Reelfoot Lake, the stranger it got. Of course, there's the Native American myth of how Reelfoot Lake was created, and that's a whole story in of itself. But I mean, that whole area is just weird, and they actually have had other people get killed over duck blinds out there. And even though Reelfoot Lake is a natural area and it's a state park, they do a lottery. And if your number gets drawn in the lottery, you get a duck blind, and because they have all these permanent ones.
Yeah.
Because the lake's not real deep. I think at the deepest, I think Reelfoot Lake's like 8 foot deep or 10 foot deep. So you have a lot of waterfowl out there, and that's why it's such a big place for hunting ducks and things. But there have been other people who have killed people and shot people. And then also there's a famous ghost story out there about some guys in the woods that were haunted by, I don't remember the exact story. I have it's in my book that I'm writing, but this group of older guys were out hunting, and they were sitting around a campfire, and they had all this crazy stuff happen to them. And these kids claimed to have hoaxed it all to scare the guys off the land because they were on somebody else's property. But the guys went to their graves swearing that they had seen and experienced all this paranormal activity. And that's back in like the 1800s, late 1800s. But that whole area is weird. Reelfoot Lake, that corner of Tennessee.
Yeah. And it's just, it looks so out of place too. It's like a cypress swamp.
Yeah.
That, you usually don't see that except in the deeper South, getting down in Louisiana and down in there. And yeah, there's all kinds of stuff around. There's all kinds of different ghost stories, and like I said, the legend that I think it's the Chickasaw tribe that's down in there of how it was
Yeah.
formed and things. And I know, trying to remember why. I think 13 Ghosts and Jeffrey, one of those old books about hauntings in the South. So she had some stories from Reelfoot Lake in there.
Yeah, and they even people who are on like in boats on the water have weird things happen to them. They'll have like a sudden fog that just comes and envelops them, and they'll hear weird voices and weird noises, and they'll hear Native American chanting and drums and things like that. They'll just be out in a canoe on the water fishing, and all of a sudden this fog just comes up out of nowhere.
It's definitely a curious place. There's places like that in the Smokies too. Fontana Lake, the North Shore of Fontana Lake. I would venture to suggest that that's probably one of the most haunted areas in the Smokies there, Cates Cove. Weird stuff, man. And I love it. I'm not a researcher or an investigator per se. I'm more of a legend tripper. I just like to go places where these things have happened because I feel like if you go in there expecting something to happen, it never will. And I like to go to these one-off spots. I've been to like where I've been to Point Pleasant and the Mothman and that whole thing. I've been to Hopkinsville, where the Hopkinsville goblins were.
Yeah.
In fact, I interviewed Geraldine, I can't remember her last name, but her dad was one of the ones that was involved in that. And what's the other one there in Kentucky, that weird looking thing with it had like a big headdress thing behind its head, looked like it was wearing a metal dress.
Oh, yeah. I know what you're talking about. I can't think of the name of it.
But yeah, I've been to that place. I've been up to Dover where they saw the Dover Demon.
Yeah.
And again, that was just a one-time thing over 2 nights, I think. But it's just to be in that area. And I actually inadvertently ran into one of the witnesses of that. I was staying with some friends in New York at the time, and we went over there to a house party, and it was in Dover. And I'm asking people, like, what about the Dover Demon? And they're like, oh, you need to talk to Bill. Now, there was 2 guys named Bill that were witnesses. One, I think, went by William, and the other went by Bill. But they're like, Bill, get in here. And this guy came out of the kitchen, and he sat there and told me what he saw. And it sounded just like, the description, the same story that he had given the police back in the 70s or whenever that happened. I don't know. He seemed kind of bothered by it. I don't know if, he kind of relived it or not, because I know when I go on these shows and tell my Black Eyed Kids encounter, I relive that stuff. I mean, my palms sweat. You can hear it in my voice. There's a part of me that's back there. I mean, it's like I was talking about those Vietnam veterans. I've seen guys start talking about what they saw over there, and suddenly they just kind of trail off, and they get that look. It's like that Charlie Daniels song, "Still in Saigon," that there's certain traumatic events like that will be with you forever. And that's the way that encounter was for me. And I believe that's the way this guy's witnessing of the Dover Demon was. But I live for this stuff.
Yeah. And I research. I call myself a researcher too, because I go down the rabbit holes.
Well, I'm a personal researcher, and I put it in my books and stuff, but I'm not, I'm not one of these boots on the ground guys that goes out there and tries to provoke spirits and those things. I like to go and visit the area and bask in the paranormal ambiance, if you will, and think, I'm standing where this happened, or I'm in the community where, was terrorized by this creature or whatever.
Yeah. Well, the only thing I really go out and investigate is haunted places. Ghosts are my forte, and so, but I like to study and research any manner of paranormal because it just all fascinates me, no matter how crazy it sounds or how deep down the rabbit hole I go. Sometime and get some esoteric stuff and all that.
The Flatwoods Monster is the one I was trying to think of. I've been there, and I like it when these little towns sort of embrace that, like. Point Pleasant, they have the Mothman Festival. There's the Mothman Museum. You can buy plush toys, for your kids, and dog treats, cookies baked in the shape of Mothman. I love it when they embrace that. They do that in Flatwoods to a degree. Another place is Bishopville, South Carolina, where they had the creature down there, whatever it was, the lizard man, they called it. Look kind of like the creature from the Black Lagoon, that sort of thing. But I love that. And the one thing I especially don't want to be called as an expert. I've gone on shows before.
Yeah.
And here's Steve Stockton. He's an expert in the paranormal. No, sir, I am not. You can't be an expert in something that can't be measured. Is the way I look at it. I'm knowledgeable. I study it. I visit places and things, but I don't think there are any experts. It's because that would mean that there was scientific evidence that it was reproducible or something like that before, I think. Now, that's just my opinion. Other people may disagree. People that call themselves experts will certainly disagree, but I don't consider myself an expert in anything like that.
Yeah, I don't either. And I think I find it ridiculous that other people call themselves experts, but like you said, in a field that you can't prove. And also, one of the things I've heard you say is that, every time you think you have one question to answer, there's 1,000 more.
Yeah, and that's to me. I don't even look for answers anymore. I'm looking for the next set of questions.
Right.
And as Charles Fort wrote, one measures a circle beginning anywhere. And I was on Where'd the Road Go with Soraya Eskath one time, and he had the most apt description of the paranormal that I've ever heard. He said it's like you're putting together this huge jigsaw puzzle with maybe 1,000 pieces, and you don't have the box, so you can't look at the picture to see what you're even trying to put together. And then you find out some joker has mixed in 5 or 6 other puzzles, so there are pieces that don't go anywhere. And that's a great analogy, I think. And then Cisco Murdoch, I co-authored a book with her. We're all children in the wilderness of the afterlife, a guided tour through a haunted life. She likes those long titles.
Yeah.
But she likened the paranormal to an onion. You peel off one layer, there's another layer.
Yeah.
You peel off another and another and another. When you get to the bottom, what's there? It's another onion, probably more paranormal. And to me, that's the fun. I mean, if we had the answers, if we could say, okay, this is a Bigfoot, or, this is the Loch Ness Monster, it's this or it's that, or here's undeniable proof that ghosts exist, which I think there is some proof out there. But it depends on what you call proof. And I mean, I know what I've seen and what I've experienced, but again, it's irreproducible. And from a scientific base, if it's irreproducible, then it's not proof.
Yeah.
But that's part of the problem. And I had a pastor explain it to me that way one time from a biblical perspective. He said, well, if you look at it this way, what we consider the natural was all spoken forth out of the supernatural. He said the natural, those are man's laws. The supernatural, those are God or whoever your higher power is, those are their laws, his laws, and they can do anything they want to. So just because you can't prove it with your natural man laws doesn't mean it doesn't exist with these supernatural laws. And I like that explanation too, because there's some things that just defy any rational explanation whatsoever. It is supernatural.
Yeah, and even like on the ghost front, whenever we go into investigate a place, I always tell people, I'm not going in to investigate a haunting. I'm going to investigate stories of a haunting. And I think that, applies to cryptids and things like that, because until you experience it yourself, it's just stories. Although the stories fascinate me, and I will never tell anybody they're wrong, for telling me their story, because I wasn't there. But I think that's how you have to look at it, especially if you're serious about investigating and researching the stuff.
And that's me. I mean, I'll listen to anybody's story. I won't ridicule them. I won't accuse them of being crazy and stuff. And people have a real fear of that. But I know just through my own experiences, what I've seen, what I've heard, what I experienced, is I know what it was. I mean, I know what happened, but people may listen to that and say, oh, that's just, hooey or whatever. But I know. That'd be like you put your hand on a stove eye and you burn your fingers, and then have somebody tell you, well, that's not hot. It didn't burn you.
Right.
It did. Look at my hand. I know what I saw. I know what I felt. I can't explain it, but it happened.
Yeah. And we could sit here and talk for another 3 hours about all things paranormal and the experiences we've had and all that stuff.
Absolutely.
Everybody go check out Steve on Missing Persons and Mysteries and his channel 13 Past Midnight on YouTube. And go check out his books. If you got Kindle Unlimited, the books are free to read.
Yeah, they are on Kindle, and it's Strange Things in the Woods, My Strange World and Strange Things in the Woods is just what it sounds like. Those are stories that I collected over the years. And then I would go on one show or another, and invariably the host, or if it was a call-in show, they'd say, well, these are other people's experiences. Has anything ever happened to you? And I'd trot out one story or another. And I got to thinking, I probably got enough to fill above a small book. And I did. And more besides, I've got, since that one was written, I've had more experiences. I've had other experiences that aren't in the first book. My Strange World, that's all me. And then the National Park Mysteries and Disappearances series, it has missing people. But I've gone a step farther. It also includes local legends, haunted places, Native American stuff, a little bit of everything in there. So there is the missing. And that's the same way with their channel, Missing Persons and Mysteries. Missing people will always be the focus, no matter what. If we can bring one person home, or give one family closure, then that's what we've been called to do. But now the mystery side of that, that's wide open. One of our most popular segments that's not about missing people is the listener stories, where people send in their stories of things they've encountered. Now, there's been some people that went almost missing and things like that, but there's sleep paralysis, there's shadow people, Hat Man, ghosts, demons, all kinds of stuff. I just did a 24-hour marathon a few days ago and played all those videos back to back to back, and would break in occasionally live and talk with the chat. And I loved it. I hadn't heard some of those stories in a long time because I get so tired of listening to myself. By the time I narrate it, edit it, and then play it back once before I send it off to have a video made, I'm tired of hearing me. Yeah. and I understand the people that say my voice is relaxing and it calms them and helps them forget their pains and stuff. I put myself to sleep before in the editing booth. I'm sitting here and I'm listening to me drone on, and I'll nod off and then wake up and what did I miss? I've got to go back and listen again, because if I don't, I'll have missed something. And I get pretty colorful sometimes when I keep flubbing something. And I've know that you've edited some audio for me. And I get frustrated sometimes, get tongue-tied, or and sometimes I'll just say things 2 or 3 different ways to see which sounds better on the playback. But I don't always go back. Now, if there's a premiere, I will go sit in the chat. But even then, I'm not really listening. I'm talking to the people in the chat. But it was so refreshing to go back and hear all those stories again. There's some great stuff on there. As of right now, that video, it's still processing. It was 24 hours, and I guess YouTube's taken a while to process that one for the live playback. I've had all kinds of people message me and say, why can't we watch the playback? Where's the replay? I want to see this. Like, it's coming. It's coming. It's YouTube. But come check it out. And 13 Past Midnight, that's more paranormal over there. A little bit of everything. I have guests. So we have a young lady, Thin Lizzie Borden, aka Bree, that comes on every now and then, does the oracle and tarot card readings for the chat. I tell a lot of my personal stories on there, a lot of live shows, and then I play some of the radio, the horror-based stuff. Most of it's nonfiction, but lately I've been doing a series called American Myths and Legends. It was written back in the 1800s, and it's got some legends I've never heard of. I'm going to have to check into some of these farther. Now it talks about the Jersey Devil and stuff that I have heard, but then there's a lot that I had. That's a 4-part series, lasts about 8 hours, I think. So I'm having the time of my life, man.
Yeah, I love it all. And also, if you're listening to this podcast now, go subscribe to Missing Person Mysteries podcast also, because y'all put out the audio from a lot of your videos, and you've been putting out 4 or 5 episodes a week.
Yeah.
But that way you can enjoy it on the go and don't have to worry about messing with YouTube sometimes. But definitely go subscribe to YouTube as well.
Absolutely.
But thank you so much for coming on, Steve. It was a pleasure as always.
Oh, my pleasure, Eric. Anytime you want me to come on, I'm more than happy to. And I'd like to have you come on 13 Past Midnight. So have you been on that channel before, haven't you?
I think so, yeah. It's been a while.
I think you were on last October when we were doing 31 Nights of Halloween. I did something every night for 31 nights. Either went live or played production videos or both. But I'd like to have you on as a guest. You're a fascinating individual, and can't wait to meet you in person one day.
Yeah. Hopefully that's soon. Hopefully this year sometime we can get together.
Tennessee guy like myself. It's always good to meet another fellow Tennessean volunteer, whatever you want to call us.
All right, everybody. Y'all stay safe out there. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to the Unseen Paranormal Podcast. Join us next week for an all-new, amazing guest. And in the meantime, please go on Spotify or Apple and give us a rate and a review. And go over to YouTube and hit that subscribe button. Also, if you would like to submit your story, you can email it to unseenparanormalpodcast@gmail.com. And you can remain anonymous if you like. Once again, thank you for listening. We'll see you next time. Stay safe out there.